Stock United Football Club. I've been involved with the club for 26 years now. I'd just like to give you an overview, sort of summary of some of the things, the history and some of the things that go on at the club. I don't know actually if there's anybody in here that wasn't aware that there was actually a football club in the village. We have occasionally had people come up to us and been quite surprised when we say there's a football club. But what about the club's creation, first of all? I'll just show you this noticeable, one or two of you may have seen it hanging up in one or two of the pubs in the village. I'm not sure if you can see at the end of it. It now says founded in 1908. It's a little bit deceptive actually. That did originally say 1919. But in the Mid-Essex Football League's history they produced a few years ago, it showed stock 1908 to 1909, and they produced the final league table for that season. And as you'll see here, stock 9 points. Some interesting names there for the teams they played that season: Hoffman, Corinthians, Poplar, Officers, maybe a military side of some description, Artworks, and at the bottom there Ingatestone. So that made us think, well, when was the club founded? What's going on? So we contacted the Essex FA, and they advised us that first registration of the club was actually back in 1908. Registered for 2 seasons, and then the club seemed to disappear off the map. But interestingly enough, there's fixture cards that the club's had for many years. This was from 1965, 47th season. If you work the years back, it comes out 1919. So we thought something's going on here. Anyway, what it turns out happened was that the club was set up in 1908, but it was set up as Stock FC, not Stock United. And it was registered again with the FA in 1914, but this time as Stock United. And unfortunately the First World War breaking out, that put paid to any football for the next 4 years. But in 1919 they're registered again as Stock United with the FA, and then appear for the first time in the Mid-Essex League in the season 1920 to 21 in Division 2 South. Now, we came to the conclusion in 2008 that it was our centenary year, and it may be, if anyone has any other information about these early days as to whether there was a connection. We made a decision that there probably was a connection. It was the village club, whether it was called Stock or Stock United, and the Mid-Essex League seemed to recognise us as being the same club. So we made that our centenary in 2008. So who actually founded the club? 2 brothers, I presume, C.H. and G.H. Webster were the joint secretaries in 1908, and they were the 2 individuals that first registered the club, and then A. Cable registered Stock United in 1914 and 1919. He apparently lived at Home Cottage in the village. We've got a couple of early handbooks from the league. The club's always been involved in the Mid-Essex League, except for there's been 1 or 2 years where there's no record of us, but by and large one of the earliest clubs within the Mid-Essex League, one of the founding clubs. The reserve teams, when there have been reserve teams at the club, have usually been in Mid-Essex. They had sort of flirted with Brentwood District League, Basildon District League, but by and large also within the Mid-Essex. And these handbooks will be produced, still are, give all the details, rules, regulations, teams, etc. We only have a cutout here from 1934, I believe, and it says here, Honorary Secretary W. Elliott, Cherry Tree Cottage, Stock, League Delegate A. Woodward, Mill Road in Stock. And this little book here from 1969, names may be a little bit more familiar. Honorary Secretary Peter Keeling, 1 Back Lane, Stock. and lead delegate was Dave Elliott. I have heard that very early games in the 1920s were played something called Stanlarks, which I believe is next to Greenwoods, down is it Park Lane, just turning next to Greenwoods. But the first concrete evidence of a pitch was from the 1930s. Peter Keeling's sister apparently used to sit on the back one back lane. This was before the war, and watch the players going down back lane to the pitch, which was a pitch we just had. We think it was at Vernon Corner. Yeah, it's either there or Brookman's down a bit further down. It's somewhere in that area. The venue moved after the Second World War, October 1946. The pitch actually moved to where we are now in Mill Lane, and the Lister family that owned the field there kindly allowed us to use it for a peppercorn. It's an absolutely superb surface. I think maybe many years ago there was some sort of quarry there underneath because it does drain so well. The pitch has to be kept in good condition, and back in the 60s somebody called C.G. Bartrup, or a company called C.G. Bartrup, who came from Ford End actually of all places, used to cut the pitch for £3 a go. They were still doing that in 1974 using their grey Massey Ferguson tractor. And obviously we have to mark the pitch out for the games, and the minute book shows that in 1959 we were using creosote and lime. Not much has actually changed in that respect over all these years. And cables in Mill Road, the builder's yard there, was supplying those materials for us. Now you've got up here one or two of the members of the club helping to put up some new goalposts, because in our centenary year we actually got new goalposts via the Football Foundation. We raised some money and they provided 50% of the funding for these new lightweight goalposts to put up to replace the others that have been there for, well, I don't know how many years, to be honest. One or two incidents we've had at the pitch over the years. Back in the early 90s, I had a phone call from one of our players, Mark Dixon, saying, "Do you know about the caravans that are all up at the pitch today?" I mean, a home game there. Interesting. And it turned out that the Caravan Club had been given permission to use it on the wrong weekend, and we had to ask them to move all their caravans around the side of the... and we played the match in the middle, which is quite interesting. Everyone probably remembers back in 2001 the foot and mouth episode. There's a footpath that runs across the middle of the pitch, and the council, when we spoke to them about it, said you can't walk along the footpath because we don't run backwards and forwards across it. And they said, can we use it or not? And they went, we don't know. So they said, but if you do use it and you're found to be in breach of our rules, then you could be fined £1,000. So we thought we better not use it. I've got, this is what they stuck up on our gate. It's a bit warm now. It says, foot and mouth disease, public right of way has been temporarily closed by Essex County Council under regulations March 2001 for the purpose of preventing the spread of foot and mouth disease. Stuck on our gate, and no further matches were played that season. Probably just as well, because I think we were due to finish bottom of the whole league then. So we managed to escape that, and the whole season was cancelled. There's an interesting letter here actually about the usage of the pitch from about 1980. The owners were a bit concerned that we were using the pitch from April. There's still games going on into May, so a bit of a problem, and they wanted us to take the goals down and vacate the pitch by the beginning of April. Peter Keeling, secretary, wrote back to the managing agents at the time saying, sincere apologies to Mr. Lister and assure him that there's never been any deliberate attempt on my part to take advantage of his generosity. And he says that obviously we'd endeavour to make sure we finished by the end of March, even though there's considerable difficulty in making alternative arrangements. This is of no significance when one considers how lucky we are to have the use of the ground at all. And written on the bottom sort of capital letters, remove goals by. So had to be very careful not to lose the usage of the pitch. The facilities, always been interesting, this topic. Just before we come to that luxury build, in the 1930s, the Cock Inn apparently was the changing rooms. I'm not sure anyone would have thought having a beer in there on a Saturday lunchtime, seeing footballers getting changed in the corner, and they'd walk to the pitch in Back Lane. The first facilities at where we are now in Mill Lane were put up in about 1951. Got permission. It had to be something that was temporary, couldn't be permanent structure. And we think it was just a bit further along where the terrace sort of houses are, sort of opposite the windmill. It was somewhere in that vicinity until about the mid-60s. And then it was moved to the site where we are now. And apparently Mick Wernick obtained the shed. I'm not sure if it's actually that one that got moved. They sort of dismantled it, maybe moved it. It was called the chicken shed.
It was literally a chicken shed.
Yeah. Well, I know when I was changing it. There was a picture of the inside of it, but I thought we won't show that. Unfortunately, I remember a game in the early 90s where there was an almighty crash and the beam from the away team side luckily fell down on some of their players, and we realised it was time to actually get a new one. So we actually invested £100 at the time in 1994 in the next room. You can see it there. Obviously we've gone up in the world. This is a new porter cabin. And interesting in that, when we moved it from the road with a big crane to the site, we blocked the road off, and some chap in a sports car insisted on driving up, and we said we're not going to get through, and he was most adamant, and he sat there for about 3/4 of an hour in his Porsche 911 or something, so couldn't go anywhere. But the services, unfortunately, are pretty limited. We're a little bit behind the Bowls Club on this one, I'm afraid. Going back in the records, in 1979, Peter Skingley apparently was to review the water and electricity connection. In 1996, my very good friend Dave Dangerfield was still reviewing the water sewage connection, realised it was going to be too expensive. There's a horse trough in the corner of the field which has for many years have been used for players to clean their legs, and also filled a medical bucket up with water, so help hygiene scenario there. Dave Elliott had a great pleasure in telling me that he actually used to dig a hole. I'm not sure if this is every single week, but he said he used to dig a hole behind the chambers and put a bucket in it for obvious uses. We have progressed now, as you can see, to porter cabin loo there, but water and electricity and that sort of we plug into the house next door now for that. So we meet minimum sort of FA requirements, but it's an improvement to many years ago. Just a little thing I found in the records about the sort of security of the whole place was a letter Peter Keeling wrote to Dave Elliott in 1970. He said in the letter, if you can just leave the key in the usual place and then put after it under the door. And team has to have a kit to play, and fixture card from 1935-36. Oh, that's the referee's hut on the side there. FA's rules, you have to have a separate referee's hut. So just in case anyone was wondering about that. Anyway, the club's colours traditionally have always been red, green and black, although somebody did say once they thought right in the outset, in the very early days, it was light and blue. But red and green halves was on the fixture card for 1935-36. Still the same kit, style of kit in 1961. You see from this photo though from the early 60s, somebody decided to break all the rules.
That caused a great deal of anger when that black and white stripes was purchased. Yeah,
I'm sure. So the black and white, as you can see, Colin looking very youthful, and Dave Elliott just behind him there. Yeah, the black and white was a bit of a change there. In one of the early handbooks, it describes the shorts as being knickers. That's the 30s for you. And in 1968's AGM said the reserve team would have the same kit as the first team, and the varied always the red, green and black sort of over the years since then. There was a reserve team in the 90s, so claret and blue because they were West Ham supporters, I think. But we tried, and there was another variation, so this blue one, which Mickey probably remembers wearing, don't you? Probably, is that your shirt, Mickey, number 5? No. Far too small, I mean. A little variation, that's from the 80s, but we tend to stick as much as possible to the traditional colours. We've had sort of red and black stripes here in the 90s, and hoops, and then green and black hoops here. So we do like to try and keep to the colours if we can. The kit washing. There's a record in 1984 of 177 being paid to Aldry for washing the kit. In the late 80s, Dave's mum, Mrs Elliott, used to wash it, and I always remember Dave Dangerfield used to take the kit round to her every week, and she'd say, "How did you get on?" And he'd say, "We won, Mrs Elliott." And she'd say, "Oh, excellent." She said, "What about the first team?" And Dave'd say, "We are the first team." And she used to do this every single week, without fail, she'd come up with the same question. And the teams themselves, team selection and club honours and things. This is the earliest picture that I've got, and the back row, left to right, A. Stammers, B. Watson, H. Elliott, A. Dixon, Val Taylor, it's a goalkeeper, Percy Dixon, Fred Makings, Tommy Allen and Charlie Doe with the flag there. In the middle, the 4 guys there, Fred Dixon on the left, Jess Elliott, H. Rayner and Les Mapes, and front row left to right, John Cotty, Vic, I think it's Woodward, F. Rayner in the middle, Jay Wright next to him, and then Alf Porter at the end there, taken at the Vernon Corner pitch behind the pub. They're actually have got there the Langdon, I think which one's which, the Langdon Charity Cup and the Division 3 League Cup for that year on that. Moving on to a picture from the late 1970s here. We've got maybe one or two faces might be a bit more familiar. Nick Oakham at the back there, Peter Keeling is next to him, secretary of the club for some years. Dave Griffiths, in the centre goalkeeper, Martin Andrews, Ross Paul, William Pitt, as he's known, Pitt, talk a bit more about him in a little while. Front row from left, Mick Turpin, Paul Morrissey, Terry Friend, Nigel Weston, Tony Byford and Ian Brown. That was apparently taken at OCs, I believe. But,
yeah, that is OCs.
That was at OCs, yeah. Yeah. And team selection, way back, it was like telegrams were sent out to people, the teams were up on the notice board in the village. In the 1960s, Dave Collins apparently used postcards, all the information you need to know, and saying at the bottom in capitals, if you can't play, if you're not, let me know without delay. So there's a bit of a threat there. Honours over the years, titles, Division 3 quite popular, 3 times before the Second World War. 55, 56 was Division 3A, whatever that was. 77 Division 3 again, 78 Division 2 Cup. Reserves had some success in 81 and 92, Division 6 and 5 Cups respectively. And back to Division 3 Cup again in 98. Sorry, that was titles, not cups, apologies. That team I was talking to Mickey about, we believe is the 1984 side. That was probably taken a year after they had come very close to winning the Premier Division double. They'd won the League Cup and they were just picked, I believe, at the end of the season to the title, which would be the only time in the club's history that that would have been achieved. Quite a strong side that. Then in 2005, the club, this more or less the same team, won the Division 4 title, Mid-Essex League in 2003, and then in 2005 won the Division 2 title. You might recognise one or two local lads here. John Pryor, left side there, still manager of the team, has been for about 15 years now. And Martin, another local lad, not playing just at the moment. Dave Tennant here in the front, Simon Dixon, Mark Dixon next to him, 2 brothers. Handsome chap is there. Mark Bland on the end there. Some local lads in the side that helped us with that trophy, that title. Well, that's Mark Dixon holding the Division 2 title trophy. Fine fellow amazing. Mickey Dixon picking up the Premier Division Cup in 1983. They beat Danbury Social at Chelmsford City's old ground near Rittle Street. Mickey says he can't remember a thing about the game, so it must have been good. There's a programme. We used to get these programmes for the matches. They still do them. Details of the team. That was the Division 4 winning cup side from 1987. I can't remember anything about that game. That was played over at Burnham against Walden St Mary. We won by the odd goal, I think. You can see there again the old kit there, red with the green edging colours there. And 1991, the Division 2 Cup final. Impressive result here because we didn't expect to win this against a very strong South Woodham side. Drew 2-2 with them on a Tuesday evening, and we had to go back on a Saturday afternoon and play it all over again. And we came out 2-0 winners in that game, rather surprisingly. Mark Dixon scoring both the goals in that game. Interesting, Nigel Gollan, this player, had played for Stock before. His brother played for South Woodham in that game, but he hadn't told him that he'd re-signed for Stock. His brother was trying to get him to play for South Woodham that season, and you see the look on his brother's face when he walked out of the changing room. Very memorable game that was. And just wanted to mention one or two little things about some of the players over the years. There was apparently a chap who, we don't know his name, but in the 1930s, he always wore a cap and he took the cap off to tackle people. I don't really know who this individual is. Perhaps you could let us know. Dave Elliott told me that his uncle, Walter Elliott, was a player for Stock before the war, but unfortunately he was in the 1st Airborne Division. He got killed at Arnhem. There was a goalkeeper called Morgan Reynolds who played for Stock. He actually got signed up by Leicester City. I'm not sure he played for the first team, but he went to Leicester. One of the players that was in one of the photographs just now, his name was Mick, I think, Turpin, but everyone knew him as Dick Turpin. He lived up to his name, actually. He used to get dragged out of the pub to play, and he ended up appearing in the 1960s before the club's honorary president, Peter Greenwood, in Chelmsford. I'd love to have heard that conversation. A chap called Jim Train played for the club for some years. He played for Gateshead, a midfielder, Scott, and he had a trial for Rangers. There was other individuals. Just take that out there. One or two others who have some detail. The Porters apparently played for the club in the very early days. Lived cottage by the Common. Eddie Porter, George's son, played for Chelmsford City, but came back to Stock. Maurice Elliott played in the 50s, in midfield, I believe, and there's a chap called Scott Walker, also as a singer actually, but he apparently used to like eating fish and chips in the car before matches, going to away games. When Pitt was manager in about 1980, apparently he had trials. One guy apparently cycled all the way from Pleshy for the trial. I don't know how he'd been fit to actually take part in the trial, but Peter Keeling played 60s and through to 1977. He played right back. He said, that's it, only a place I can play, I only know how to stop people. And he said that, I think it was his last game possibly, but Colin might know this. He said one of the only goals he ever scored was away at OCs in 1977, where he scored a 30-yard rocket past Colin Tang. Dave Elliott, I know very well, and he probably is the club's longest serving player. I haven't checked this out, but he played for 30 years, 1955 to 85. His first game was when he was about 15 years old, and unfortunately his last match against Fifield in 1985, he says again he can't remember much about it apart from the fact that Peter Keeling had to take to hospital a player who'd head-butted the post. Anyway, that's just a little bit of some of the individuals involved in the club over the years. They tried to set a youth team up once or twice in the past. We have got a youth team now. 1970s, Dave Elliott asked about it. Somebody put in the minute book, no one's able or willing to organise and train the youngsters, which is a great shame. For many years there hadn't been a youth side. There was a representative side for the Mid-Essex League. Had 4 stock players in 1980 when they were in the Premier Division. Simon King, Andy Chinnery, the goalie, Scott Walker and Gary Smith, which had got into the newspaper. They had quartet from stock in Mid-Essex League squad, little article. Used to get things in the press sometimes, it doesn't happen so much anymore. And there's a letter I've got here from Peter Greenwood, written around about 1980, where he says, he's actually writing this too actually, but he says, yet again you have done so well, and what is so impressive is the spirit in which you play. Many professionals would do well to follow your example. I think by and large the Tans, I don't know what he means by that, he gets out of it, he says the Tans have been well behaved, and he says, I am so proud to be your president, thank you for having me, bless you all, Peter Greenwood. And then underneath he puts as a postscript, that reminds me, I will get Bishop McMahon to watch the second 11 next year. You never know, he might work a miracle. So they obviously haven't been doing very well. In 1931, teams like Hoffman, Sads, Ingatestone, Chelmsford YMCA, back in the early 30s, Essex Regiment, the Territorials, Crittals, Mildmay Ironworks, EJC Gaslighters. Colin remembers playing against them. Then after the war, 1949, the RAF, Chelmsford Post Office, ECC staff, Chelmsford Boys Club. That was the reserve team winning the Division 4 Cup at Sandon, 1904 I think that was, played Rainsford. There was a telegraph wire running across the pitch. And you never wanted to kick the ball up in there if you thought you might hit the cable. But 1973, the first team lost 8-2 away to Braintree Nomads. And in 1981, the first team played a team called the Joker. Some interesting names there. The friendly games, obviously, to get you ready for the season, need to be played. And I believe the early 80s, something Peter Taylor, obviously had involved with England recently. He was supposed to be in Billericay Town to play stock. I'm not sure if it ever happened. And even John Lyle was supposed to be in the West Ham team over to play a friendly back in 1979, but apparently that did get cancelled. Probably because West Ham would have lost it. So, they used to play games around Christmas and New Year. It never happens now, but in 1949-50 season, we played Margretting at home on Christmas Eve and Leeds at home on December the 31st. I don't know how fit the players would have been for those games. But there we go. Judge Greenwood, back in 1975, said he was in the minutes, and he said he was going to try and get a French team to come over and play. I think he had a property out in France and was trying to get whether that ever happened again. I really don't know. But getting to away games, which was interesting. Apparently in the 1930s there was a charabang from the village garage that was run, and the handbooks used to put in details of how to get to grounds. So they'd advertise the nearest train station, LNER from Billericay, Eastern National buses. It seems that after the war, in the expense book we've got, taxis were more popular. 1959, we've spent £93, 10 shillings on taxis, which rather bizarrely dropped the following year to £50, so I'm not quite sure what happened there. A coach was hired to get to ECC Writtle in February 1957. And Dave Elliott told me of in the 50s and 60s, Charlie Palmer used to run a car. And he remembers, because cars weren't so popular then, some old chap in front of them blocked their way when he broke down, got out and looked in the wrong end in the boot instead of the engine to find out what was wrong. We started to hire coaches to get us to the cup finals we took part in, which amused the opposition because they just used to sort of roll up in their cars and we'd sort of come in a big coach, which backfired on us one year when it broke down and the lights wouldn't come. and we were trying to drive home in the dark. One of the players hot wiring the wires to get the lights to work. But probably the funniest thing I remember from around about the late 80s was Grant Risley, one of our centre forwards. He used to be a delivery driver, and he had a van. We used to get in the back of the van to go for away games, and end up starting matches with seasickness or something because he's thrown about in the back of his van. And we went to the wrong pitch on one occasion, had to drive another 5 miles or so to get to the game, and we're running out of time. Everyone was getting changed in the back of the van. Grant stopped to get some directions and so everyone thought they were at the pitch, started getting out of the back. He said, no, we're not there yet. Everyone got back in. The van sped off. This was like sort of, a comedy, sort of Keystone comedy. The van sped off. The doors flew open, which half the team fell out the back of the van, including the goalkeeper, Steve Burner, at the time, which one of the players shouted to him, "That's the best dive I've seen you make all season." Social events always been very popular with the club. Back in the 50s, dinner dances were very popular. 1951, there was a band, paid £8 for band. I think this was mainly at the Old Village Hall. Waiter tips and band refreshments, 14 shillings and 3 pence. And in 1961, there was a grand Christmas dance. I've just got some details. This is interesting. James Dace tuned the piano up for us, so obviously Chaz and Dave were probably playing. 17 shillings and 6 pence they charged, and there was an order from Home Stores in stock from Dave Collins, the secretary at that time. Dear Mr. Weston, I think it says, club are holding Christmas dance at the Village Hall, 16th of December. I shall be pleased if you can supply the following for refreshments. 4 loaves, sounds like something else in the Bible, doesn't it? 2 pounds of sugar, 1 large, in brackets, tin of Nescafe, 1 pound of margarine, 1 pound of ham, 1.5 pounds of cheese, for I think that's 24 shillings. Saying you collect it on a Saturday morning. Sounds like they had a pretty good party anyway. There's no alcohol now, I don't know what's happened there, but Dave Elliott said that in the 60s there was a lot of Friday night dances at the Old Village Hall. In the 1970s, the minute book says they were being held mainly to try and attract new players because they were short. Fundraising events, things like Whist Drive recorded £10, 16 shillings, 11 pence in 1955. Sponsored Walk in 1985. We used to have post-Christmas parties in the early 90s at the British Legion Hall, where we always ended up with too much food and took most of it home. But probably something I was quite proud to be involved with was the money we raised for the cardiomyopathy charity, which is an article in the Chelmsford Weekly News. Paul, one of the players, his parents, his family, died very tragically, quite young, of cardiomyopathy, where his heart literally just stopped suddenly. And we raised over £2,000 for his charity, got some old players back in that, and that was in the local paper, so that was a real honour to be involved in that. There was minute books also recalled trips that have been made over the years. Hackney Empire, 1955, April 55, £4, 7 shillings and 6 pence. Sounds like a wild night out. Chelsea versus Crystal Palace may have been the League Cup final from 23rd of March 1954, and FA Cup final in 1960, 10 shillings and 6 pence for 2 tickets. And we still are entitled to FA Cup final tickets each season from the FA, which is pretty good. To the vice presidents, Sir Stanford Cooper, the Harnett family are on there, the Keelings, Makings family are listed, Reverend Tatham, and 1 or 2 others. Chairman then was Peter Dixon?
Percy Dixon.
Percy Dixon, sorry, yeah. Dave Elliott, Peter Keeling, Jim Train was the captain at the time. There's also, from the very early days, see this, some interesting names here. From 1931, vice presidents included Lieutenant Colonel Welsh, the Listers on their Lister family, and one or two others. We've got the cables listed. But interestingly enough, from the early cars, you do see sort of like military names and religious vicars and things turning up on there. So there seems to be quite a traditional sort of involvement in the club at that time. The accounts book from 1949 has got the names of people like Tommy Allen, Leslie Upson, Percy Dixon again, are all listed as families that have been involved in the club for many years. But Judge Peter Greenwood became president during the 60s and until his death just a few years ago. And some of the vice presidents we got noticed, say like 1959, all the publicans of the village. Tommy Allen of the Cock, Percy Dixon the Hoop, D. Harris the Bakers, and D. Weston from the Bear. The year before that, it's noted Admiral Haggard, I think he's been mentioned already. So Admiral Haggard is listed, Dr. Patterson, Reverend Tatham, and the Reverend Turner. Some interesting names on there, and that brings me to, if we just go back a picture of Pip. All the managers over here, he might be one of the most interesting. He came in when the club's fortunes maybe weren't doing so well in the late 70s, stayed with the club till its successes in 1983. He'd been with Edmonton Boys and Tottenham Youth when he was in the 30s before the war. During the war he was with the Royal Engineers, blowing up obstacles out in Germany at the end of the war. I think his wife was German, I think he must have met her over there. He said, coerced into taking over the team when he was in the Hoop one evening back in 1977. He had a simple philosophy for the game, which was basically pass and move off, but he's using a different word. Somebody said, I don't know if he used to enjoy just a small whiskey at half time sometimes, but I don't know how true that is. Some of the meetings, committee meetings that were held, first venue to record as being Stafford House. I don't know if actually where that is. You want to know where Stafford House is. 1935, used as a committee room. Since then, the club's used every pub in the village, and the cricket club very kindly for meetings. British Legion Hall. We've been everywhere since then. This one picture was taken at the centenary in 2008 at the school. There's from Colin John, current manager, Dave Elliott there on the far side. John Dixon used to be involved in the club there. There's Fields in the audience tonight there. Helped run the club. Various guises over the years as well in the past. So that was a nice pit. Just talking about was there. Didn't get that photograph unfortunately. And he walked. He never used to drive anywhere. He used to walk. He was in his 80s, I think, when he came up to that presentation. And he used to walk everywhere. Quite a critical character. The current side, Division 3, had a fairly mixed season actually. We've got some youngsters in the side now, you can probably see from the photograph, and that's obviously going to make a big difference I think going forwards. There's also two youth teams now, under 16s and an under 8s team. They both play in the Blackwater and Dengie League. The under 8s don't have competitive games as such now. The under 16s is also managed by John Pryor, who's the manager there in the captaincy, and also manages the men's side. They're in a cup final in a few weeks' time, I think. I think that's the future, obviously, of the club going forwards. Very easy for clubs to fold up in this day and age through lack of interest, too many other activities going on. So for us to have over 20 players on, a lot of youngsters in the side, we're only running one side at the moment. There's only ever been two sides, never had more than two teams at any time, and the reserves we've only had, I think, 20 odd seasons out of 102. So not often there's more than one side, but it works well with just one large squad. And the youth coming through, that's what we're looking to for the future. So I hope that's been of some interest to you. If anyone wants to look at the photographs, I'll put them on the side for a bit later.
I can confirm that it's spoken to the ubiquitous Billy Hewitt today, that the ground in Back Lane was behind the bungalows rather than at the Vernon Corner.
Right,
He
yeah.
remembers kicking the ball around there with Michael
Oh,
West.
right, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
father. He says the team was mainly Dixons, Elliots and Plumes.
Yeah.
Taylor was in goal.
Oh, yeah.
Tommy Allen, the owner of Cotton, had one arm as the chairman.
Oh, they had one.
Did he?
Oh, there we go. That's confirmed that point.
His own
Excellent.
grass established with Brownsman. He blew up the balls.
Oh,